This is video 2 of our notes over C-1, which is over compound angle identities. And I just listened to the very beginning of my first video, and my voice sounded pretty draggy, so I'm going to try to be a little perkier here. It's early in the morning. Okay, so in this video, what I'm going to do is examples 1 and 2 with you so that you have an idea of what you're going to do with those. So number 1 says expand and simplify. And then notice what we have here is we have the sine of the difference of two angles. That's not the one that I want. Here we go. All right, so we have the sine of the difference of two angles, 3 pi over 2 minus theta. We don't know what theta is. And it just says expand and simplify. So we'll simplify it as much as we can. And we're going to be using the formulas up here. And I just want to remind you again, this does not equal the sine of 3 pi over 2 minus the sine of theta. Okay, there's no distributive property of sines. You can't do that. They're not equal. So how do we do it? Well, again, we're going to use these more involved formulas that are up here at the top. And so if you look at the formulas, you'll see that this is the sine of the difference of two angles. And so that's this formula right here. So we're going to follow this pattern that you see. So notice it starts out, it says first we want the sine of the, I'm going to use a different color here. First, we want the sine of the first angle. So that means that we need the sine of 3 pi over 2. So I'm going to put an equal sign here. This is equal to this. So we're going to have the sine of 3 pi over 2 times, all right, then it says we need the cosine of b. Well, b is the second angle. So that's going to be the cosine of b. Then we need a minus. Right? And remember we said with the sine function, with the sine identity, if there's a minus here, then there's a minus here. It stays the same. And then we need cosine of a. Well, a again is the first angle, and that's 3 pi over 2. So now we need the cosine of 3 pi over 2 times, and then the last part of the formula, we need the sine of b. Well, b is just the second angle, which is theta. So we need sine theta. So now it's a matter of going through and simplifying it as much as we can. Well, you know the sine of 3 pi over 2, and you know the cosine of 3 pi over 2. You can go to the unit circle to find those. So remember that 3 pi over 2 is down here on your unit circle, and that's the point 0, -1. And the sine is the y-coordinate, and the cosine is the x-coordinate. So that means we know that this is -1 times cosine of, I'm not sure why I put b here, this should be theta. Cosine of theta, because that's what our angle is. Cosine theta minus, and then cosine of 3 pi over 2 we said is 0 times the sine of theta. According to order of operations, you do these multiplications first, and so this is just negative cosine theta minus 0, which is simply negative cosine theta. So that's all they're looking for here, is to simplify it that far. Excuse me. All right, let's take a look at the second one. All right, the second one says, show that the square root of 2 times cosine of theta plus pi over 4 is equal to the cosine of theta minus the sine of theta. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work on this side. This is sort of the more complicated side, and we're going to show that if we simplify that, it will simplify to this. So in other words, it's kind of like the first problem, except that you're told what the answer is. Right, and so we just need to make sure that we get that when we're all finished. So I'm going to, just to help you out here, I'm going to write the formula right above this so that we can see it. So this is the cosine of the sum of two angles, and the cosine, remember, the cosine of, and this is plus, so I'm going to write the cosine of a plus b. And if you look at your formulas up above, you'll see that the cosine goes cosine, cosine, sine, sine, and remember that the sine, S-I-G-N, switches in the cosine. So this will become minus, and then we have sine A, sine B. That's the very first formula. All right, so then that means if we start over here, we're going to have the square root of 2 times the cosine of theta plus pi over 4. And so that's going to be equal to the square root of 2 times. Now, this whole thing right here is going to turn into this. So it's going to turn into a sum. So I'm going to put it in parentheses here, or brackets. So now this becomes cosine theta, cosine pi over 4. So that's the cosine part. Again, cosine of the first, cosine of the second, and then minus from the formula up here. And then we need the sine of both of the angles. So it would be sine theta times cosine pi over 4. I'm sorry, times sine pi over 4. Sometimes it freezes and I have to redo the document. Okay, so now this turns into the square root of 2 times, and then we're going to have cosine theta. Now the cosine of pi over 4, so again, you can get that from the unit circle. Pi over 4 is right here. That, of course, is the ordered pair square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. All right, so you're not done with your unit circle. You're still going to need that. So square root of 2 over 2 minus, and then sine theta times, again, this is the square root of 2 over 2. All right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the square root of 2 times each of these terms. So no, this is a whole term and this is a whole term. So I'm multiplying square root of 2 times this whole thing and times this whole thing. So I just want to point out that when you do that, like when I multiply the square root of 2 times this first term, well, I'll write it right here. I get the square root of 2 times cosine theta times square root of 2 over 2. And then the same thing here, I'm going to get square root of 2 times sine theta times the square root of 2 over 2. And what does that simplify to? Well, this is just three things multiplied together. This times this times this. So I can multiply them in any order that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of 2 times this. So the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2. 2 over 2 is 1. So the product of this and this is just 1. 1 times cosine is just cosine. And then minus. And then same thing over here. The product of this and this is 1. And then 1 times sine, and this should say sine theta, is just sine theta. So this is sine theta. So there we've proven it, because that's what we wanted to end at. So I'm going to stop here, and we'll do problem 3 as a separate video.